AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 284 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, Uber Green has been rebranded Uber Electric, while Uber X is still Uber X and Uber Black is still Uber Black. But Uber Eats is now... No, it's still Uber Eats. Actually, the whole thing needs a rebranding. Brian, it should be... Let's call it Lyft or something. It's got a ring to it.
The world's largest heat battery is now online. The bricks inside are heated to as much as 1,500 degrees Celsius, or roughly the temperature of a microwave burrito.
Not 2 weeks after we announced a new record for floating wind turbine size, a Chinese company has blown that record out of the water. Literally.
Oh my. California has a new law aimed at preventing grid storage battery fires. Step 1. Keep those microwave burritos as far away from the batteries as possible.
All that and more on this exciting edition of the Clean Energy Show. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. I was on a little trip, and that's why we're late this week. But first of all, I want to start by announcing that I'm officially on the Toronto Blue Jays bandwagon.
Oh, you fell on, did you?
I fell on, yes. The Blue Jays are in the World Series for the first time since 92-93. And I was actually living in Toronto in 93 when they won. Oh, yes. Very nice hat. James just put on his Blue Jays hat. Yeah, I was living in Toronto in 93 when they won the second time and joined
Is that right?
Joined the party down on Yonge Street where there was literally hundreds of thousands of people on Yonge Street. It was super fun time. So yeah, the games have been really interesting, but what I can recommend really is the YouTube highlights for baseball are really good, at least during the playoffs.
Yeah.
They cut the game down to like 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And, you know, for baseball, like that really gets pretty much everything.
I know. I'm a regular watcher of Blue Jays in 30, which is how the Major League Baseball in North America will package it in a 30-minute with 2 commercial breaks. And yeah, I'll rewatch a good game and just take it in and absorb the endorphins that come with your team doing well. But I'll run away from a bad game pretty easily. I found it actually... You know, my dentist asked me about this the other day if I was a Blue Jays fan, and I said, you know, when I was a kid, around teenager and early college age, we had not that many channels really going on, but on Wednesday nights they would play Blue Jays games and Expos games. They were a defunct team from Montreal, Canada, and I slowly just kind of got into it because I had nothing better to do. Wasn't a lot of dating going on and things like that, so I watched Blue Jay games on Wednesday night, and I became a fan, and they started doing well a couple of times. And then in 92, I was a full-fledged Blue Jays fan. There's a picture of me wearing a Blue Jays cap directing a film in film school.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to our friend Don, who reluctantly appeared in that film. I was thinking about that the other day. He said, if you can't find anyone else, I'll do it. And he did it. And I'm forever grateful and guilty for putting him through that because it was winter outside and he didn't like to act, but he did a great job. Yeah, so I went down to Minneapolis to see them because my brother gave me a Lada station wagon.
Oh, yeah.
And it was only like 3 years old. And I thought, I've never had a new car. And this thing's a Lada from Russia. It's not going to last very long. I got to make my trip now because I've never had a car that I could be confident taking a trip in.
Sure.
And so I took my current partner, Janice, and we went down to Minneapolis. And then our friend Brett decided that he was going to shoot a film again that day. So you're involved in this story, Brian, because you were the cinematographer on that film.
Okay.
So one Saturday every August, he shot for 4 years or something like that. Yeah. And he decided at the last second that he assumed I would be available. So I had to shoot a film as an actor all that day. And then, and that film went to the John Candy Film Festival and came in second, by the way, because there's a documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
Well, it was an inaugural thing. It wasn't that organized, and I was fat, so I got the award. Or the film did. Got recognition.
Yeah. So you had to shoot all day, and then you drove all night to get to Minneapolis?
Then I drove all night, and I was awake for 24 hours. And yes, I was a young man at the time, but it was hell. when we got to Minneapolis, it happened to be the weekend that the Mall of America was opening, and there was no hotel rooms, and you couldn't go anywhere to find one. This was 92, the first year they won the World Series, and they weren't doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
So we did see one game. We stayed in St. Cloud. We backtracked and stayed in a smaller town. Oh my God, it was awful. I fell asleep and I thought it was 2 days later, but it was only 2 hours later. And they said your lights are on because I was too tired to turn off my headlights. So that was an issue, but the car still started, thankfully. Anyway, there was a pitcher named Jimmy Key, and he is their primary starter pitcher, and he wasn't doing very well. But they lost 2-0. But the commentator said that was the game that turned it around because he only lost 2-0. He kept them to 2.
Yeah.
And he had started to become a good pitcher again, and they never looked back and won the World Series for the first time, and that was pandemonium across Canada, just unbelievable. Yeah. And of course, the basketball team, the Raptors, did it a few years ago now, but it's always great. But I will say this before we continue. James has been overexposed to baseball, and I find it too stressful to watch the games these days. And my son had to phone me the other night and said, "Dad, you should turn on the game. They've got a couple of runners on base." And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. And then he texted me, he said, that was probably heard across the neighborhood. And I said, oh crap, what happened? And of course there was this 3-run home run that changed Canadian sports history forever. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. And God knows I've seen every version of that home run from every angle with just the crowd with, every angle. They must have had the repair the roof after that because they had the roof closed on the stadium there.
All sports is fun until you start to care too much, and then it gets too. That is stressful.
Right. I 100% agree with that. Which is why I love baseball because they play 162 games.
Yeah.
They suck one day, you turn it off. I'll come back tomorrow. It'll be different, and it often is. So, and there's like a football game, if you're a football fan, there's only 17, 18 games, depending on the league. And, I'm talking North American football. Soccer, more games, but not 162. Apologize for calling it soccer for those of you outside of North America, but you know how it is.
It starts up again Friday night. But so I was just in Toronto. We had this little trip planned, and we didn't coincide with any baseball games, so we didn't have to worry about the baseball traffic, although, it would have been fun to have a chance to go to a game or something, but we didn't. So what happened was we had this trip planned already to Toronto. It was going to be just a few nights in Toronto, and I was talking last week about One Battle After Another, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, which was shot in VistaVision, this obscure film format that film nerds like me care about. And it's playing in VistaVision in 4 cities in the world. And one of them was Boston. So we thought, well, we're going to be in Toronto. It's a fairly short flight to Boston. So let's fly down to Boston for a couple of days and watch a movie, One Battle After Another. So we did that. It was at the Coolidge Corner Theater in Boston, or Brookline, Massachusetts. Super cool art house theater that's been there for many, many years. And they literally had to bring these projectors out of a museum and install them in the projection booth to be able to show this film in VistaVision. But it looked great. Like, the key thing there was it was shot on film and the prints were made off the original negative, a contact print off the original negative. And that's just a super rare and fun experience to see. Part of the movie was shot in Stockton, California, so I thought that was kind of fun. And it's very good. It's a thumbs up from me, although I think Paul Thomas Anderson has made better films. I tend to like his other films more. There Will Be Blood, Licorice Pizza, Punch Drunk Love. They're all great. So he's got a high bar for himself, but it's still very good. We were at the airport and our flight got canceled, as often happens. So I realize these are very much first world problems.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to complain about it anyway. They started by delaying it. So, okay, your flight's delayed by an hour. And then, it's delayed by 3 hours. It's delayed by 4 hours. And so, we were already at the airport for 6 or 7 hours when they finally canceled the flight. And so then they rebooked us. It comes through on your app. This is Air Canada. So we were leaving later that night, and we had to then go Boston to Montreal, Montreal to Toronto, stay overnight in Toronto, and then fly back, a day late to our home in Regina. So that's what we did. If it was more than a day, we might have tried to book another flight or something like we did the last time when it was Minneapolis. But anyway, it turns out there's basically no hotel rooms available in Toronto, and it's between baseball games, so I'm not sure what the deal was, but we tried to find an airport hotel in Toronto. Absolutely everything was booked. Nothing was available.
Really?
So we had to get a hotel downtown. There was almost nothing available. So we had to, take a cab and go downtown at midnight to get into our hotel. Had to pay an exorbitant fee for this hotel, almost as bad as when Taylor Swift was in town. So I don't know. I'm still confused.
You just
but anyway,
can't win.
You can't win. But so we were sitting in Montreal booking our hotel, and we just finished booking it. And then we got a text from Air Canada saying, "Oh, sorry about your disruption. Click on this link and we'll get you a hotel." And I clicked on the link, and this is Toronto. Like, we already know that all the hotels are full. So it gave us two options in Bowmanville and Whitby, which are two entirely different cities from where the airport is, 77 kilometers or 61 kilometers away. And this is where they wanted us to stay. And, we would have had to take a hugely expensive taxi to get there. So I don't know. I'm going to submit some receipts to Air Canada and see if they give us anything. They've already given us a $100 coupon. But, it's all ridiculous.
Well, Brian, I'm thrilled to announce something good in my life.
Oh, yeah.
It has to do with my Leaf and the repairs for it. I've nailed it to the system. I've screwed the man. I am getting my car repaired at my daughter's high school.
Fantastic.
In the shop class for free, except for the parts.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. They gave me a printout of the parts that I need and the costs of it, like a regular repair shop.
Wow.
Which is something I guess they do.
Well, that's probably better than a repair shop.
Because they're not going to screw me.
Yeah.
I told them what the other repair shop from 3 years ago told me I needed for my suspension, which is the first major repairs I've done on this car. It needs a couple of ball joints and a couple of tie rods. And I've been waiting for the wheel to fall off for 3 years now and lose the car completely. So now I have this thing going for like $350 with taxes. And I paid it. My daughter took my credit card and paid it at the office. They have, a system there for paying these things. It's all a regular thing. Like the teachers get their winter tires put on there every year. And I'm thinking, why didn't I think of this before? But my daughter mentioned it, like she took one class in grade 9, like a lot of people do, like part of a class with shop, that kind of shop. And she said, you could do that. And I've been kind of getting more desperate over the years and pushing her. And she finally cornered the auto teacher. And he said, yep. Well, I'll send you the, we got the parts in stock. I'll send you the email with the cost and you can just pay it. And Monday morning, I have an appointment.
Nice.
At the shop. And thinking, what else do I need done? What else can they do? I mean, they can't fix the heater, unfortunately, because it's not a certified high voltage shop. So they're not, even if they did, I wouldn't let them. But, because high voltage is involved in the resistive heater on those things, which is something I know because I learned about what it would take to fix it, the heater in that car. So, yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm pretty thrilled that that's happening, and I won't worry about going over bumps or snow-clogged roads anymore. And worrying about the car coming to its demise. One time on the show, I went to a hardware store and I intervened in a discussion about EVs and said, you're wrong.
Right.
And the woman at the cashier said, well, my boyfriend, he would miss the smell of gasoline. And I don't know what the look on my face was, but I wish I had a picture of it. Anyway, there is now Kia, in certain situations when they're importing cars in certain countries, are handing out gas-scented car air fresheners with a new EV purchase, with the Kia EV4. And I thought that's just rich.
I mean, it's probably better than smelling the gasoline itself.
Hopefully it's not the actual, it is VOCs. I wish I had my detector to put it up to one of those, but yeah. So Astro Auto Finland, which imports Kia's vehicles into Finland, is giving away free gasoline-scented car air fresheners for those buying the new EV4.
James's TV Corner. Like Brian's TV Corner, but better.
Yeah, that's a retro, but it's not used very often. But I finally started watching the television series Fargo, which is, for us, airing on Prime now, with almost as many damn commercials as there is in real life, which is just pissing me off. But it was set in Bemidji, Minnesota, which I didn't know was real, even though, of course, I just said I've been to Minnesota. I knew a few places there, but it's a real town.
Mm-hmm.
And when the pipeline plane buzzed my house at 300 feet above, terrain yesterday, I looked at it on Flight Radar 24 to see where it had gone previously in the day. And because it flies so low, the radar just dips out for like a couple hundred kilometers at a time, but then you see it pick up if you keep zooming back on your map of North America. And it went all the way to Bemidji, Minnesota. That's where it originated. And then it flew over the pipeline that bordered my house and checked all the pipelines that go down to Bemidji from here. Now I know where the pipeline goes. Well, there's several of them, but at least one of them, probably the Enbridge pipeline, oil pipeline, goes that way. Anyway, it was a weird connection because I just finished the show the night before. So now I'm on season 2, which we'll discuss at another time if there's any relation to clean energy.
All right, so moving along, this is from Energy Storage News. There was an announcement very recently from Hungary that claimed to have the world's largest industrial heat battery, and just a few days later, that record was already broken. So this is a thermal energy storage heat battery, and it's been put up in California. Rondo Energy is the company behind it, and they say it's a 100 megawatt hour heat battery, and this is at an industrial facility operated by the Holmes Western Oil Corporation. So they have a solar farm to power it. So they heat it up with solar during the day, and it stores a ton of heat, over 1,000 degrees Celsius. And typically they discharge that over a 24-hour period, but they can store it for as much as a few days if they have to. They're claiming a round-trip efficiency above 97%. And if heat is what you need for your industrial processes, it really doesn't matter how you make it, and you might as well make it with clean energy. So this is for an oil company, and they have other natural gas heaters doing the same kind of job. So this isn't some magic solution that has eliminated the carbon emissions from this facility, but this is a start. Heat batteries are going to be huge things. These industrial heat processes are a huge contributor to greenhouse gases. So the more of these kind of clean heat batteries that we can put into operation, the better. And one of the side benefits of this, it's basically simpler to put up than something fired by natural gas because, the permitting is just easier and simpler. Anytime you're burning fossil fuels, anytime you have exhaust from something, noxious gas exhaust, well, guess what? There's special permitting that you need for that. And you don't need it if you just have a heat battery that is powered by solar panels.
Wow. We've got a press release from Rondo Energy about wind turbines. So I don't know if they get into other things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this isn't industrial, right? It's working alongside industry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it the oil industry?
Yes, it is an oil company.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what they're using heat for, but.
Okay. Well, Uber Green is shifting to Uber Electric. Have you ever used an Uber Green, Brian Stockton?
Yes, I have done that. Yep.
You've had is it come up as an option when you're ordering an Uber in some cities?
Yeah, exactly. You don't always see it. It just depends on how many electric cars are in the route, but I have definitely chosen it on certain occasions.
So Uber Green is an eco-friendly ride option that connects you with drivers using hybrid or fully electric cars, but now they're calling it Uber Electric. It's renamed. It offers lower emission alternatives to regular rides, at least it used to, with each trip producing at least 25% fewer carbon emissions than the average ride. Did you have to pay more for an Uber Green? Because I think you did in some markets.
Yeah, typically it's a little bit more, yeah.
In the Uber app, you can request an Uber Green trip the same way you would an Uber X. Uber X is just the normal one, right? Is that...
I've always been confused by those labels, but yeah, I think Uber X is typically the first option that comes up.
It's a car that has at least 4 seats, I think. Although, what else would you get in this part of the world? You're not going to have a motorcycle show up, but as they do in Africa. The new name reflects Uber's global increase in EV adoption. We've talked a lot about Uber trying to move towards EVs, but private vehicle owners have to be encouraged. So they are offering $4,000 in grants to switch from gas to electric, which is less than, the U.S. grant you would have had from the government, the tax break of $7,500 that just went away like a couple weeks ago. So it's, they're moving towards EV adoption, and this is one of the ways they're doing it. riders choosing electric vehicles get discounted fares. So you can choose an electric vehicle and get a discounted fare now instead of paying more, which is really weird.
I guess it kind of makes sense, though, because the cost of driving electric should be cheaper per kilometer.
I don't know how long this will last. I guess it's part of the rebrand celebration.
Yeah.
But, it's if you drive an electric vehicle and you get a higher rate as an Uber driver, as a gig worker, as crappy as that can be, at least it's maybe a little bit better. And I've seen plenty of people driving Bolts, like they'll lease a Bolt or a Leaf in the United States and with the purpose of full-time Uber driving or Lyft or whatever. And they find that, they have to take the time to charge maybe once in a while. But the fact that they paid such little money for it increases their salary.
Yeah.
If they're leasing it for like 3 years or something like that and having the $7,500 taken off that, it's crazy. And they're a nice car to drive in. Although the back seats on my Bolt aren't great, but I mean, they're short rides. They're not going across the country like my family sometimes did at least a couple of times. So there are now 200,000 EVs operating in Uber's global network. 1 in 4 Uber riders say their first ever EV ride happened through the Uber app, which is another big plus for this, because you want people, especially around here, who think they're unicorns, they're magical unicorns, these EVs, and they're not real. If you drive in one a couple of times on an Uber, maybe you becomes normalized to you and doesn't seem so bad. And then you could talk to the driver about it if you have questions or if you have, wrong ideas about it. So Uber has long supported electrification, they say, partnering with autonomous and EV startups like the now defunct Arrival to promote sustainable mobility. And as U.S., the EV incentives disappear, at least nationally. Locally, you might get some. Uber is stepping in to encourage adoption through its own programs. It's positioning itself as a leader in sustainable ride-sharing while reinforcing its $200 billion commitment to innovation and climate goals.
Yeah, it's a step forward. I'm trying to remember, I think the first time I used Uber Green, I clicked on it and I got like a Tesla Model Y. And I thought, this is great because it's electric and it's also a good Uber car. You got lots of room. It's nice to sit in. And then the next time I pressed Uber Green, then I got like a Toyota Highlander hybrid or something like that. And I'm like, okay. Like that's
big difference.
It's a much, much different thing. So then, I haven't really pressed it much after that. Which sort of points out for me, like one of the biggest issues with Uber is I'd love to be able to just pick what car, because the problem is you can pick Uber X and get a Tesla Model Y, or you can pick Uber X and get a Toyota Corolla, which has a short back seat that I bang my head on the ceiling.
Right.
So you never know, there's all these different categories, but none of them tell you what car you're going to get. And that's the choice that I would like.
Let me ask you this, and Uber should be listening. Would you wait longer to get the car of your choice, say an extra 5 minutes?
Yes, because it already gives you estimates on time. So it'll say Uber X 5 minutes, Uber Green 7 minutes, whatever. So yeah, absolutely, I would do that.
Okay, well, Uber, you should be listening.
But I would also add that, I just spent time in Toronto and Boston, and these are both cities that have terrible traffic. Like they're both a nightmare in terms of car traffic. And Toronto historically has had pretty good public transit, but they're just not keeping up. They need to expand it, and they're just not doing it fast enough, and they haven't done enough they haven't done a congestion tax or anything in Toronto.
Yeah.
So that no one is discouraged from driving downtown. And for some reason, everybody wants to drive downtown, which is a terrible idea. The traffic is horrible. And Boston seemed to be very, very similar. We took some Ubers in Boston and, it all seemed like a pretty nightmare traffic scenario. And not a lot of electrics in either Toronto or Boston. Like you definitely see them, but it's not like the West Coast. And so, you just have these enormous amounts of traffic in both of these cities, and most of them are gas powered. And it just seems like you're going back to the 19th century. Like it's unbelievable that these cities, the lifeblood of these cities is still mostly gasoline cars. It's really crazy.
Now, you and I lived for over a year, I guess, in the same neighborhood. We overlapped. I did, 14 months in Toronto or something like that. Yeah. Did you take your bike downtown very often?
Yeah, I did. I enjoyed it, yeah.
It was about 30 minutes, as I recall, roughly, maybe to like Union Station or something like right downtown. Yeah, I remember doing it. I was thinking it's it's as fast or faster than the subway. But wouldn't it be great if there was bicycle infrastructure? Because I had to ride in the streets. I was a young man who didn't value his life quite as much as I do now. So I think that would be just fantastic if there was excellent bicycle infrastructure for that city, because I did it year round.
Yeah.
There was a couple of days with snow. Maybe the year that I had was different because, I mean, the military was there shoveling them out one year.
Yeah.
But it seemed like a place that you could bike year round, even for a guy who never did it before. That was my only transportation there.
Yeah, and the bike lanes have really improved. Like back when we lived there, you really had to think about your route. And if you did it long enough, you sort of had your own you could figure out some special routes that were better. But they have quite a few bike lanes now in Toronto. They still need more. And there's a lot of political opposition.
Out, though. The provincial government is taking which makes me think that if the city, which is more progressive than the province or the suburbs, wanted to do congestion pricing, the province would come in and say no. Kind of like what's happening in the States. The federal government is trying to kibosh that.
Well, in Toronto, there was an amalgamation. Like there used to be separate cities. Toronto and East York and North York, they were all separate cities, but they were amalgamated many years ago. So the progressives live downtown, but they're always outvoted by the suburbs. And everyone in the suburbs just keeps voting to let cars go everywhere. And I walked around Kensington Market. It's, a famous market in downtown Toronto of lots of really interesting shops. And it's on these really narrow streets and just packed with people. And it'd be a no-brainer for this to be pedestrian only. But they still allow cars. It's absolutely insane. These narrow streets, not only do they allow cars to drive through Kensington Market, they allow you to park there too. Like people treat them like it's a normal street. And it's just packed with people, like an obvious no-brainer that this should be a pedestrian-only area. From Canary Media, new regulations to prevent grid storage battery fires in California. So back in January, we may have talked about this on the show, I can't remember, but the biggest so far battery fire, grid storage battery fire in the U.S. was in Moss Landing back in January. And California, we know, has been ahead of the curve when it comes to grid storage batteries. They're going quite heavily into grid storage batteries. But this one came online way back in 2020, which was the absolute dark ages for grid storage batteries. The whole idea of a grid storage battery is probably, 10 years old at most?
I'm sure there's been some experiments, but for all intents and purposes, sure. Yeah. Maybe not even, barely.
So back in 2020, they kind of didn't know what they were doing yet. They did this installation. Now already we have a better understanding of these things, and typically a grid storage battery are in shipping container-like things, and they're kind of spaced far apart. And, you do that for fire prevention. But they didn't know to do this back in 2020. And they even put batteries into an existing building. They had this empty building, and they thought to themselves, well, we've got this empty building. It's not doing anything. Let's put some batteries in there. But, in terms of fire suppression, that was a bad idea. So this was a huge, huge fire that burned for several days. They had to evacuate some surrounding communities. It destroyed this building that they had put some of the batteries in.
Yeah, we did cover it on the show, and they said, no worries. Don't worry, no we tested the air, it's fine. And I was kind of skeptical about that because I was thinking about air quality at the time as well.
Yeah. So basically, California has decided, okay, we need a statewide regulations for this, because previously this was just a local matter. So you might have some local city council, whoever the safety inspector is, have to approve this. Maybe they've had absolutely no experience with grid storage batteries. So now there are statewide regulations in California, and it includes liaising with the local fire department wherever you are. So you have to, plan properly for a fire if there's going to be one. And of course, all of these new ideas of putting them in storage containers, putting them far enough, having fire suppression systems, and so forth. And this is important because, like I said, California has been a real leader in this. When this one came along in 2020, they had 15,000 megawatts of batteries. They had only hundreds in 2020. And this year they now have 15,000 megawatts, and they're aiming for 52,000 megawatts.
This is in a building, you say, like inside a building.
Part of it was where the fire was, yeah.
So I never understood that to be the case. Everything I see are shipping containers outside. We have one by my house here that they experiment with.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seemed like it was during our podcast. We've been podcasting for 5.5 years when Tesla they came up with a product, the Megapack, I think they were calling them at the time as well.
Yeah.
And for grid power, they were basically storage containers or something that size that went outside. And they put it up in California. It made a lot of headlines because it was a bigger scale thing at the time.
Yeah.
And then Australia said, hey, maybe we really could use something like that. And Musk came out and said, well, we'll have it going in, I don't know how many months. I think it was like, it wasn't very long.
Yeah, 90 days or something.
Yeah, it was really fast. Maybe a couple of months, maybe 3 months. I don't know. But it was really, even then when I had more faith in him, I thought, no, but they did it.
Yeah.
And they said basically guaranteed it. We can do it or it's free. And they did it. And in Australia, they learned from that and they realized they were saving a lot of money from power outages and equipment failures because they could respond to increases in electricity use really instantly with those batteries, as opposed to winding up a fossil fuel turbine or anything like that. And so then they went gangbusters on batteries ever since then.
Yes, and of course, there's been at least one bad battery fire in Australia. But again, this is early days. 2020 is when this was all starting to crank up. So it's only 5 years later. We've had a few fires and, we have presumably learned from that, and this shouldn't be as big a problem going forward.
Well, from what I understand, they can have better technology to find a cell or a section of the battery that is undergoing a thermal runaway, and they can suppress it. There are different ways of doing it. All that said, I believe, and I think you would probably agree, that from what we've heard recently with sodium-ion batteries, that is a new chemistry that has been around for decades, but has now been perfected to the point where it makes sense now. They have lower energy density, so it doesn't matter so much how much power, the volume and weight and size of it comes out with than lithium. And ultimately, they will be much cheaper. In fact, incredibly cheaper. And it seems, it's hard to say for sure, but from what we are hearing from China, that is probably going to be the future of grid storage. And those batteries are a lot safer. They don't have the thermal runaway problem, and you can drill a hole in a pouch pack of them and they won't ignite like a lithium battery will, although that's usually not the cause of the fires. It's usually a defect that causes it to heat up and heat up and heat up, and then the other cells heat up and heat up and heat up next to it. So that's exciting because, I see a tremendous amount, and they're talking about really low prices per kilowatt hour of storage or kilowatt of storage capability, like $10 or something like that instead of $150, which it had been recently.
Yeah. And, because of California and these new regulations, it's not like it's without issues or complications when installing one of these things. But as I've said many times, solar, wind, and batteries is just infinitely easier and less problematic than pretty much anything else, than fossil fuels, than nuclear power plants, than fusion, for God's sakes. Like, let's just get on with it and install more solar, wind, and batteries.
Yeah, because time is of the essence. That's the problem. If this was 30 years ago, we could be saying, okay, well, fusion hopefully comes around, and they were saying that then, but and small modular nuclear, we really need, I do want to talk a little bit about nuclear. I want to interject here because this morning, as I was enjoying my second cup of coffee, the Prime Minister of Canada was announcing billions of dollars for Canada's first small modular nuclear reactor, which is under construction in Ontario. They're going to build 4 of them. Yeah. It's going to cost $21 billion, which means it might be $30 or $40 billion in reality by the time they're done, because this is a new technology. I feel good about it, except for the price tag.
Yeah.
I'm worried that the price tag is, it just, from what we talk about on the show, seems like a bad idea, because what we're doing here in our province of 1.2 million people, Saskatchewan, Canada, is we are extending our coal plants to 2050, which is a whole generation, Brian.
Yeah.
It's a whole generation from now. It's 25 years. And it's absurd that we'll be the most coal burning place on the planet, probably, except for some place in Siberia or something, if Siberia and Russia continues to be the way they are. And who's going to want to do business here? The planet's going to warm up. It's going to get worse. And people are going to be even more conscientious about that. Companies are going to be more conscientious about their carbon footprint. Why would anyone come here and do business if we have the dirtiest, by far the dirtiest grid in the world? And here's another thing. We're going to replace those with small modular nuclear reactors. We're going to be on the forefront of that, perhaps in the 2030s. But that's going to be so expensive. We're going to have the most expensive electricity because we're putting $1 billion into the coal to keep them running.
Yeah.
We have to pay for the coal. We have to pay for upgrades on the one that is trying to capture carbon from one of those plants and not doing a very good job. It's getting like 50% instead of 80 or something like that. And with the most expensive electricity, here's what's going to happen. I'll tell you right now what's going to happen. You can mark my words. People are going to disconnect from the grid.
Yeah.
Because solar and batteries, like home batteries or car batteries, but mostly home batteries, in that by 2050, are you kidding me? Like roofing will be like, do you want a shingle or do you want solar? And do you want a battery of this size of, like you'll be, and think about a 6 kilowatt system on a home now for solar. If they come through with the development in solar panels that they're talking about, that'll be a 10 kilowatt system, like layers of, modules on top of each other collecting light of different wavelengths and all that. If that comes through, and I have no reason to believe it won't because there's so much solar in the world that advancements are incredible. So that's going to happen. And then people are going to, and then the electricity gets even more expensive because less people are buying it. If you're an industry here or a farmer, even a small business as a farmer, you're going to set up your own power. You're going to disconnect from the grid. And that's going to make it even more expensive. We're just going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And at the same time, be polluting the planet. It's just insane. It's just the wrong idea to have no solar and very little wind here.
There was a story on Canary Media this week. An Ohio couple is suing the city over their rooftop solar fees. So in Ohio, this couple built a very expensive solar and battery system on their house. And then just after it was finished, they changed the regulations and now they have to pay all these extra fees for it.
Oh, crap.
So they're suing. But of course, the solution for them is, yes, suing them is a good idea, and hopefully they can make some positive change. But they already have a very expensive system with solar and batteries. Just add a couple more batteries and then disconnect from the grid and just, tell them to go F themselves.
It's just ridiculous. It's absurd. And, like the home plug and play solar panels are now a thing. And hopefully that'll become, I'm sure if they aren't allowed, it's going to become a black market thing. But I could add more panels to my house just by setting them up in my yard and plugging them in. I've got a fence that faces south that I would love, and it's got reflection off the snow in the winter. It could be quite interesting to have extra solar. And I'm thinking about it if it becomes a possibility. But I digress. MingYang, that's a Chinese wind turbine manufacturer, unveiled its next generation floating wind turbine platform called the Ocean X. And it is a Y-shaped thing. So basically it goes down to one point on the ground and splits off into two turbines.
Yeah.
Two very big turbines. Why floating? Well, for people who are new to the show, or if you're not aware of this, the continental shelf on some places in the world, that's the shallow water off the coast of places. So the east coast of North America, it's got a pretty good shelf for wind. So you can put the wind turbine right into the bedrock on the bottom of the ocean floor. It's not that deep. Off England, UK, all, Finland, there's lots of places between them and Nordic countries that seem to have great, I'm not exactly sure every place in the world, but I know Japan has issues, like it gets very deep there. And I know the west coast of North America gets very deep and there's no bedrock even. There's a lot of sediment, like, hundreds of meters of sediment to not be able to set something up. So they have these floating things, but they're not completely floating. They don't float free. They float on the surface, but they have cables that go into the ground instead of concrete. Yeah. So they sort of drill pilings to have the cables hold them in place. And it's more expensive than a normal, but you're able to use it where you couldn't before. So they have a 50 megawatt large floating turbine. I think the normal offshore wind turbine record we have on the show so far is 26. Yeah. Right. And they kept going up by 2, but the last one went up by 4, which blew our minds. This is 50 megawatts with one floating turbine, which means 225 megawatt floating turbines on there, which is incredibly big. And because you can't put it anywhere, you could probably put it out of sight of the coast. You just need to run the cable back to shore. So that's very interesting. And the bigger they are, the more wind they can get more constantly, right? There's more drafts the higher up you get that's more constant, especially on the ocean. It can operate in deep sea environments of 40 meters or more. It's got 290-meter rotors on it, which is 3 football fields, kind of. Claims, and this is interesting, to be typhoon resistant.
Okay.
So I remember there was this giant test turbine in China a couple of years ago that we had on the show that we found out that this horrible typhoon hit it, and it did fine because it was able to change the angle of the turbine blade so that it wasn't forced to spin, and they could easily lock it down, and it did fine, apparently. Yeah. So that capacity, Brian, of this turbine would double the size of the largest design currently available. And mass production, not just production, but mass production is planned for the next calendar year, early next calendar year. So in a few months, they are getting ready. They're setting up the factory to mass produce these on a large scale. It aims to offer a cost of less than 10,000 Chinese yen, $1,405 per kilowatt in American fund. But that's about 50,000 yen. Compared to that, it's a fifth of the cost of other per unit of electricity that you get out of it, which is it's mind-blowing. So yes, it would. This seems like a far-fetched, crazy idea, but when you look at how much less it is per the energy unit that you're getting, that seems like this could be a sustainable design. If it works, fine. And yeah, that could be a fifth of the cost of some of their other floating wind turbines, which could make it competitive. China has blazed past previous targets on renewable energy with record rates of wind and solar power installation. And yeah, they're going gangbusters. They've passed their 2030 goals 6 years earlier, which we've said on the show before.
Absolutely amazing. All right, if you want to contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Leave a voicemail, speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. And you can join the conversation on our Patreon page and get access to additional content.
And some of those additional content perks are ad-free episodes, behind-the-scenes material. We've got lots of stuff on our Patreon. Go there at patreon.com/cleanenergypod. Coming up next, why? It's the lightning round.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Hey, get this. An emerging key EV adoption trend is the so-called rest of the world category. That is, in parts of the world outside of Europe, North America, and China, because we're always talking about those places for clean energy, and especially EVs. Well, guess what? The rest of the world in EV adoption, not including those places, is up 48% year on year, which is a huge adoption rate upswing and very encouraging, and not what our oil politicians want to hear around here when they're depending on the global south for expansion of oil markets. And that's important. They're 25% of the auto market. 25% is outside of North America, Europe, and China. So it's not insignificant. Yeah, going up big time. Most Canadians want an EV mandate and better prices, according to a new poll. A new Abacus data poll for Clean Energy Canada finds 66% of respondents support a version of the federal EV availability standard. And none of those people live where we do. Nissan will showcase the roof-mounted solar system that they now have for the Sakura, Japan's top-selling EV. It's a tiny little car. Next week, they're going to bring this out. They call it the AO Solar Extender. Nissan claims can generate enough solar power to drive 3,000 kilometers or 1,800 miles of free driving per year. And this thing, if you park it, will extend out over the front hood.
Yeah.
But it sort of sits. It's not really it's not built into the car. It's sort of on top of the car. And a lot of people like that. So on a sunny day, 500 watts. On a windy day, you would close the panel, I guess.
Yeah.
So you would get 300 watts on a windy day. On a rainy day, you get 80 watts. So yeah, there's different amounts of power based on the day. But you have to park in the sun.
Good for obviously camping and stuff like that. But if you normally just park your car outdoors anyway, whether at work or at home, if you park outdoors, I mean, amazing. You'd be getting not all of your charge from this, but a huge supplement.
Yeah. Yeah. And it would reduce whatever you spend, and maybe you charge less as well. Obviously, you would have to plug in less if you couldn't charge at home or your apartment. Shares of Beyond Meat, which we haven't talked about much lately because we think of alternatives coming for meat to be very sustainable compared to actual beef. As far as the climate goes, shares of Beyond Meat surged in trading on Wednesday, at one point doubling in value, extending a 4-day climb of over 1,000%. Why, though? It's a meme stock now for some reason. People are boosted. Can you describe what a meme stock is? You're an investor. Do you have any expertise in this?
Not really, but typically it's probably Reddit is the place to go to find what the current meme stock is. So I'm sure that people on Reddit have been talking about Beyond Meat, and if enough of them talk about it, enough of them buy it, the stock price goes up, and then other people see it going up and they're, hey, this is going up, and they buy more. And before you know it, you've got a huge rally. But yeah, Beyond Meat and Impossible, they haven't done that well in the stock market lately in terms of their stock price. They had a lot of early promise that, didn't seem to be fulfilled. So, I don't know if this is sustainable, if these prices are going to stay up there. But yeah, if you're an investor in Beyond Meat, you're obviously happy.
Yeah, and maybe you should sell. Never take advice from me, but a meme stock is a meme stock. I mean, how's GameStop doing? That was kind of the original meme stock, wasn't it? One of them?
Yeah, I think I'd have to check. I think it's doing okay, but yeah, obviously the thing to do would be to somehow get out at the peak of the mania, but who knows how to time that.
Well, 1,000% is pretty good.
Yeah.
Even I would benefit from that with a small investment. One of the criticisms of Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers is that they were selling themselves as meat. And, the people expected them to taste exactly like meat. And they kind of did. They kind of do. But it falls short in that expectation with too many people, they found. And I know McDonald's has in Canada, they have a McVeggie burger. They're just calling it a McVeggie burger.
Yeah, and it's not meant to simulate meat. It's more of a vegetable patty, I think.
Right, that one is. But I plan to review it on the show. They say the spicy one is better. The spicy one is better. So we'll have a review on that when I can make that happen. But also, the COVID pandemic caused inflation, and then cost of living expenses were a big deal. And they were still on a lot of prices, a little bit higher price. So people went for the cheaper option, and that really helped tank them too. It's time for a CBS Fast Fact. Chinese automakers sold more EVs in Japan last year than Toyota did. If that's not a wake-up call for Toyota, I don't know what is. Now they are launching a small $17,000 EV called the K-Car in Japan, and people expect a lot of those to fly off the shelves for young people with their first jobs. That would be a good car to have. Fossil fuel heat has caused tropical birds to decline by up to 38% since the 1950s. The 5 biggest meat and dairy producers are generating more methane than the largest oil and gas firms, according to a new report. It was covered by Yale Environment. So, yeah, talk about how beef is causing emissions. Well, it's right up there with oil. We don't drink oils, but our cars do. Mosquitoes have been discovered in Iceland, Brian, for the first time on the island nation.
No.
And there was one place where we could have gone, because we live in the mosquito capital here.
Iceland, you're off my bucket list.
At least in the summertime. It's long been one of the world's mosquito-free places, a researcher said recently. Ukrainian strikes forced half of Russia's refineries offline, leaving Moscow with no refined fuel for export. Now, this really isn't affecting the Moscow area because they've got their own refineries nearby, but there's a lot of videos on the internet now of long lineups at gas stations in Russia. And the September losses for Russia were 153 million barrels, or $12 billion in revenue. That would be for the whole month, 153 million barrels, and $12 billion in revenue for September from these strikes. And that's kind of what they depend on is oil. It's like 40% of their GDP.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're probably sowing disinformation about EVs when on the internet with their bots and such. Here are the top 4 cheapest EVs in the United States of America per mile of range, according to Clean Technica. The Nissan Leaf, the base model, $99 a mile per mile of range.
Yeah.
The Chevy Equinox comes in second, with the base model being $105 per mile of range. And the Bolt, the new Bolt, is third with $112 per mile of range. The Tesla Model 3 Standard was fourth at $115. So you get a lot of car for the Model 3. You know, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, those are all good vehicles, I would say.
Global wildfires burned an area of land larger than India in 2024.
Oof.
Ireland expands a scheme offering free solar systems to the medically vulnerable. That would be me, Brian. I'm medically vulnerable. Yeah. The solar PV scheme for medically vulnerable customers covers all homeowners dependent on electrically powered medical equipment, which technically I am because I have a CPAP at night.
Yeah.
The most severe marine heat wave on Earth has developed off the coast of China, where ocean temperatures are up to 5.5 degrees Celsius or 10 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. NOAA has categorized this as a beyond extreme Category 5 marine heat wave. And you know what? We don't talk about marine heat waves, but now they're a thing.
Yeah. I mean, probably no one did.
A company called VoltPost has launched the VoltPost Air, a next-generation AC Level 2 EV charger. This is a charger that you might have at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Or a movie theater or a restaurant downtown. Well, sometimes people will cut the cables off those to get the copper, or try to get the copper. Even though there's not much copper in them, they still think there is. And so they've got a solution for this. They're mounted at 10 feet off the ground on lampposts, which kind of makes it cheaper installation because you're using that as the installation, not to pour concrete or anything. There's already power in there. And so it's kind of a cool idea because they're putting it where you can't reach it. But how do you get the cable? You just open the app and the cable drops down
nice
into your hand and you plug in your car. And when you're done, it goes up out of reach.
That sounds...
So at night or when no one's around.
That sounds like the future to me.
It might be $1 million idea. And finally this week, Finnish researchers have revealed that cold wind generates more electricity than warm air at the same speeds. We've talked about how cold, dense winter air is better for wind turbines. Well, now there is proof that they've studied at length. Wind power advocates Renewable Finland sought to dispel the myth that warmer climates produce better conditions for electricity generation, disclosing instead that near-zero temperatures provide more high-yielding and profitable air for wind turbines. If it gets too cold, you have to have the cold weather packages, which use electricity, and it costs more to install that stuff, but it's probably worth it in most cases. Cold air has a higher air density than warm air, so it produces more energy. More molecules are hitting them blades and moving them blades when there's more of them in a given amount of air. So this effect is greater at height. So taller turbines, which are becoming more and more common, take better advantage of this. On land or offshore, they're both the same. At 100 meters above ground level, the wind blows strongly, even on very cold days. Wind speeds near the ground vary significantly throughout the year offshore. In coastal regions and highlands, but inland, monthly average wind speeds show little variations when you're that high up. Even a very small amount of ice or frost on the surface of blades affects the amount of electricity generated by the wind turbine, as the precisely designed aerodynamics of the blades change with that stuff getting added on. Potential ice buildup can cause an imbalance between blades, which can strain the turbine structures and cause premature aging. Numerous cold weather sites around the world offer great wind energy potential in demanding winter climates. Ours is one of them. Research has been conducted in a number of countries to master the difficulties that atmospheric icing and low temperatures pose for wind energy. And I've reached out to one of our listeners sent a message on X saying that there is this wind turbine that went down to minus 30. Of course, they already have the minus 30 ones, but they're advertising one out now for Canada by, I think, a European country, and I've reached out to them. The one thing that they did do that was different was they said they might last 35 years, which is longer than kind of the 25-year, maybe 30-year average. So they might be building more longevity. When you do that, the cost per amount of electricity you get out of it is lower, and then the business sense makes even more sense if they do last longer. Of course, there's moving parts on these things, and you have to replace them, but it's very expensive to put that into the ground and have it as a structure that can withstand high wind speeds. So that's a good, interesting story, and I'm going to keep an eye on that.
Excellent. And that is it for this week. So once again, if you want to contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're Clean Energy Pod on social media. And of course, that Patreon we mentioned, patreon.com/cleanenergypod. And of course, we have a merch store, and that's in the show notes.
Thank you to all of our Patreon members for supporting the show, especially our executive members, which get a shout out every week, Green Bastard, Brent Rutley. And thank you to all for joining us. We hope to see you again next week.
See you next week.